Hello, everyone. Yet another episode on self healing. I keep stressing on self healing because there's a limit to what you can get healed by others. Healing frequency is available to all. And like most important and precious elements that are available to us in abundance, the healing frequency or the healing energy is available to all of us. We block it when we feel stressed out. We block it when we feel adverse emotions. Hence, it is very important to always remain upbeat and in good space. And these shows and these series that I'm going to present to you are not exactly for any psychiatric ailments. I'm talking about periodic low feeling, periodic sad feeling, periodic anger, uh, just a spurt of irritation. That's when we get so stressed out that we lose the connectivity to the superconsciousness. And so do we lose the connectivity with the healing frequency. When we are in a calmer space and we are in the best of moods, these healing frequencies are available in abundance. So, my request would be to always be in good space. And I don't have to talk about the scientific research, and yet everybody knows, and it's a well known fact, that when you remain in a great mood, in good space, calmer, peaceful, in bliss, your immunity is at its best, your health is amazing, and your relationship starts working. Most people wait for things to be all right so that they feel good. I would say start choosing to feel good, and things will start getting all right. When you're in a good space, your relationship starts working. You even attract finances and jobs and career opportunities. You also educate yourself in a much better way, and health also improves. If you keep waiting for external circumstances to become better and better, that day may or may not come. So why wait? Open up to the possibility of being fine, being happier, being jovial, being joyous, being upbeat, being optimistic, being amazing, irrespective of outer circumstances. They say only two kinds of people who can be happy, irrespective of anything and everything. One is mad people or highly spiritual people. Well, I don't want to judge anyone. You don't have to be either spiritual or mad. You can just be happy if you choose to be happy. And tackling depression is one of those indications or one of those ways, right? So, when do you know you're depressed? I'm not talking about clinical depression once again, and I'm not presenting this so that you can replace any of your medications and go away from your medications. Please don't do that. The repercussions are severe. And again, be under the treatment if you're already, and if it's a chronic depression, deep depression, it would be good to consult the medical practitioners and the relevant authorities for that, right? This is for self healing. This is for regular people who are doing their regular chores and do feel a little low, down, and out. Depression uh, can be because of a lot of things. So, for example, simple thing like feeling of loss, severe financial loss, perhaps, or loss of joy in life, loss of control over the circumstances, or loss of loved ones, or loss of relationships, loss of prestige, loss of a project, or having a void of having to do nothing, or loss of connectivity with the divine, or the divine figure, or the guru figure. That creates a kind of a void and a feeling of depression. Basically, if you remember a story of three men going in a jungle, it's an old story. And a lion comes. And one who could fight managed to fight, one who could not fight and he could run, he escaped. The third person, he could do neither. He pretended to be dead. So, a lot of times we pretend to be dead and unavailable to relationships, to life, to circumstances, to career, to finances, to joy of life. And that unavailability is the phase of depression. It often happens when you realize you can neither fight nor flight. You can't face the situation, you can't escape the situation. And that's when you pretend to be dead. It's like a very childlike thing in a way for an observer, because a child can close the eyes and thinks that, okay, fine, if I cannot see the world cannot see me. It's basically not choosing to face the world, face the problem, face the challenges head on. And that's all right. It does happen occasionally. You do feel so low that it doesn't come within you to face situation head on. However, what you resist tends to persist. So eventually you will have to face it. And it's better now than never, right? So you have to open up to the possibilities of facing the situation you would like to escape or close your eyes to. Having a desire to be isolated is very natural and common. However, it may not be beneficial beyond a point in time. So open up. There is so much of joy and pleasure out in the world. The good news is nothing is permanent unless you make it. Everything is transient. Even good times are transient as well as bad times are also transient. So you have to just allow them to pass it out, pass off. It's transient. If you tend to resist, they will persist. So just go through it, finish off, complete the experience, and let it pass. Now you would say, you're not in my place, and that's why you're saying all these things. Had you faced what I am facing, probably you would be doing the same thing that I'm doing. Maybe you may not be. I'm going to give you some of the tools and techniques to be able to have courage to face, have desire to face, have willingness to face. And these are some of the radical statements that will help you open up to the possibility of living life 100%. And that's what will liberate you. Don't think that you have to liberate yourself from the circumstances so that you feel liberated. You have to liberate yourself from your emotions, thoughts, and beliefs so that you eventually liberate yourself. The liberation has to begin with you, from you, not from others. When you start liberating yourself from your unwanted, uh, unresponsive emotions and beliefs, you will liberate eventually from everything that has seemingly tied you up in the past. Whatever is the reason, whatever is the cause, your determination can be stronger than the influencing factors. I want you to make up that mind, intend for yourself, and choose to live life 100%. Ask yourself a question. Are you living life 100%? And if not, it's time for you to look within and figure out ways and means to live life 100% irrespective of what's happening in your space. So join me. I'm going to recite a few of the radical statements, and I will give a little gap so that you can recite along with me. The statements are very powerful statements, and if you do not understand these statements right now, it's okay. You can look into the footer section and the comment section. You'll find links to purchase the book or download a book and get the theory right. And eventually, you'll understand why the statements and how they work. And even if you do not understand, interestingly, the statements will work for you. So join me, keep reciting, keep sharing the statements, because happier people in your space will create happier surroundings. And let's live a brilliant life, right? So close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose. Breathe in a lot of joy and happiness. And breathe out your stresses or worries or sad feeling. Breathe in a lot of joy and happiness. And breathe out all depressive feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Continue. Breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your mouth. You can take 7 such breaths. And with every breath, you'll feel lighter and lighter. And if you feel lightheaded, you can switch over to normal breathing. Now, switch over to normal breathing after 7 such breaths. And recite after me. I revive my depressed feelings. I recognize my depressed feelings. I realign my depressed feelings. I reorient my depressed feelings. I reposition my depressed feelings. I revive my depressive thoughts. I recognize my depressive thoughts. I realign my depressive thoughts. I reorient my depressive thoughts. I reposition my depressive thoughts. I revive my depressive emotions. I recognize my depressive emotions. I realign my depressive emotions. I reorient my depressive emotions. I reposition my depressive emotions. I revive my need for depressive thoughts and emotions. I recognize my need for depressive thoughts and emotions. I realign my need for depressive thoughts and emotions. I reposition my need for depressive thoughts and emotions. I revive my resistance to let go of depressive thoughts and emotions. I realign my resistance to let go of depressive thoughts and emotions. I reorient my resistance to let go of my depressive thoughts and emotions. I reposition my resistance to let go of the thoughts and emotions. I revive my attachment to depressive lifestyle. I recognize my attachment to the depressive lifestyle. I realign my subconscious attachment to the depressive lifestyle. I reorient my attachment to the depressive lifestyle. I reposition my attachment to the depressive lifestyle. I revive my attachment to my space. I recognize my attachment to my space. I realign my attachment to my space. I reorient my attachment to my space. I reposition my attachment to my space. I revive my fear of facing the challenges. I recognize my fear of facing the challenges. I realign my fear of facing the challenges. I reorient my fear of facing the challenges. I reposition the fear of facing the challenges. I revive my fear of facing the challenges. I recognize my fear of facing the challenges. I realign my fear of facing the challenges. I reorient my fear of facing the challenges. I reposition my fear of facing the challenges. I revive my fear of facing the challenges. I recognize my fear of facing the challenges. I realign my fear of facing the challenges. I reorient my fear of facing the challenges. I reposition my fear of facing the challenges. I revive my desire to be in a shell I recognize my desire to be in a shell. I realign my desire to be in a shell. I reorient my desire to be in a shell. I reposition my desire to be in a shell. I revive my fear of liberating myself. I recognize my fear of liberating myself. I realign my fear of liberating myself. I reorient my fear of liberating myself. I reposition my fear of liberating myself. I revive my fear of liberating myself. I recognize my fear of liberating myself. I realign my fear of liberating myself. I reorient my fear of liberating myself. I reposition my fear of liberating myself. I revive my reluctance to live life 100%. I recognize my reluctance to live life 100%. I realign my fear of living life 100%. I reorient my fear of living life 100%. I reposition my fear of living life 100%. I revive my fear of living life 100%. I recognize my fear of living life 100%. I realign my fear of living life 100%. I reorient my fear of living life 100%. I reposition my fear of living life 100%. I revive my fear of living life 100%. I recognize my fear of living life 100%. I realign my fear of living life 100%. I reorient my fear of living life 100%. I reposition my fear of living life 100%. I revive my freedom to free myself. I recognize my freedom to free myself. I realign the freedom to free myself. I reorient the freedom to free myself. I reposition the freedom to free myself. I revive the freedom to free myself. I recognize the freedom to free myself. I realize the freedom to free myself. I reorient the freedom to free myself. I reposition my freedom to free myself. I revive my freedom to free myself. I recognize the freedom to free myself. I realign the freedom to free myself. I reorient the freedom to free myself. I reposition the freedom to free myself. I revive the eternal liberation. I recognize the eternal liberation. I realign the eternal liberation. I reorient the eternal liberation. I reposition the eternal liberation. I revive the eternal liberation. I recognize the eternal liberation. I realign the eternal liberation. I reorient the eternal liberation. I reposition the eternal liberation. I revive the eternal liberation. I recognize the eternal liberation. I realign the eternal liberation. I reposition the eternal liberation. This is Atman. Keep reciting, keep listening, and stay tuned. The more you practice, the more you liberate yourself from your own inhibitory thoughts, emotions, feelings, and beliefs. Have a very happy and liberated life. All the best. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Thank you for joining.